everybody, and welcome to today's MarketingBitz webinar. Happy Monday. Today's webinar is titled Driving Real Business Results from Social Marketing and will be presented by Nick Hopkins from HIBU and Greg Sterling from the LSA in partnership with the Illinois SBDC Network. So just before we get started, I want to let everybody know that, yes, you will receive a recording of this webinar in a follow-up email probably sometime tomorrow morning. Okay. So on the next slide, please, I just want to tell you a little bit about one of our presenting organizations, the LSA, or the Local Search Association. So the LSA stands for Local Search Association, as I said, and we're a trade association based in Michigan. Some of our members include, traditional and digital advertising and marketing providers, such as HIBU is a member of ours, and then also Google, Yelp, YP, Bing, different organizations like that. And many of these organizations work directly with local businesses like yourself. The LSA is made up of more than 300 members in about 20 countries. So with that, I'd like to pass it over to Greg Sterling from the LSA to get started with the content of today's webinar.
Hi, thanks, Becky, and thanks to Mark Petrilli from the Illinois SBDC, who'll be on, say, a couple of words in a few minutes for hosting this or for promoting this webinar, and to Nick Hopkins for doing the bulk of it. My role here today really is to set up the discussion that Nick is going to go into in much more detail. So my role is kind of the why of social media, and Nick is kind of the how of social media. And we'll have a couple of slides later that make you guys aware of this, but we also have a longer report, which is free, that Nick wrote that goes into much of this material in more detail. So that's something that we'll send to you as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about social media adoption by local business owners, and then also how social media and ratings and reviews influence consumer buying decisions. So next slide. And I don't think I said my title. I'm the VP of Strategy and Insights for the LSA, and I've been in the local business, local marketing arena for about 17 or 18 years at this point. So I feel a little bit like Yoda these days. At any rate, on to the substance now. Enough with the jokes. So business owners like yourselves, I'm assuming most of the audience is business owners or marketers who work in local organizations, have by and large adopted social media on the organic side. So most businesses these days have a Facebook page. This is a survey from Q1 of 2016, and different surveys show different things, but about 80% have some sort of social media presence. Now, this is not limited to Facebook. This can be LinkedIn, this can be Instagram, can be Twitter, can be Facebook. Only a minority are not using social media in some capacity to market themselves. Next slide. Business owners also see social media as an essential marketing method. This is a lot of information, but as you see on the right, we asked business owners, what are the most essential marketing tools, digital marketing tools and methods that you use or that you see in the marketplace? And website was number one. Social media came in number two, even above search engine optimization in this particular survey. Next slide, please. Now, it's a different story on the ad side. Nick's going to talk about ads and their value, but most local businesses and local marketers using social media have not adopted advertising, have not really taken the plunge and done anything on the ad side. They're doing most of their activity is on the organic or free side. And that's very important, but ads can also be quite useful. And in fact, certain organizations are sort of starting to force businesses to do advertising. Next slide, please. So what we see among consumers is that they are using a lot of different media, a lot of channels to search for local information in their particular market. Basically, just to describe what's on this slide, it shows channels like search engine, website, friends and family, coupon, social network, mobile, video, and so on. These are the array of things that consumers are using to look for local business information. And what I've called out are friends and family and social networks. So those are among the top sources that people are using. Very key sources along the path to purchase. Next slide, please. This is a reiteration of that previous point. Reviews and social referrals are the most trusted sources of information by consumers. So this is from a Nielsen survey about trust in media, trust in advertising. As you might expect, recommendations from people I know ranked number one. This is the most trusted source of information. And then consumer opinions posted online. And many of those are going to circulate on social media. You have ratings and review sites like TripAdvisor, like Yelp, and so on. But you also have Facebook, which has a ton of reviews on it. And so that's a place that people consult when they're ready to make a product or service buying decision very often. So now we come to my final slide. And what this slide stands for is the idea that once people go to a social network or a ratings and review site, they're going to then take action. So these numbers reflect the percentages of people who visited these sites and then immediately thereafter made a phone call, went to a store, visited a website, or sent an email asking for more information. So you see these are very high contact rates coming from these places, and it's even higher on social networks and ratings and review sites than search engines. So this is really telling you information on some level that you're already aware of, either explicitly or intuitively. It's very important to have a presence on social media. It's very important to have ratings and reviews and be conscious of the way in which those influence purchase decisions.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you very much, Greg. As mentioned, I'm Mark Petrilli. I'm the State Director for the Illinois Small Business Development Center Network. And the Illinois SBDC is actually part of a federal, state, and local partnership program that includes the U.S. Small Business Administration, here in Illinois, the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, and a number of local partners, universities, community colleges, chambers, economic development corporations, CDCs. So we got a number of partners throughout the state. And our this partnership is actually part of a national, America's SBDC network. So the Illinois SBDC and then SBDCs throughout the country provide a number of services to both pre-venture and existing small businesses. And we provide no-cost, one-on-one confidential business advice and guidance. We also provide no-cost to low-cost training. And we also have a lot of other resources available and tools and research information available for those client companies as well. So, but just quickly, some of the services, everything from helping with developing business plans and strategies, and helping with marketing plan, fiscal analysis. Obviously, we provide a lot of help with companies in accessing capital, whether that be traditional financing or investment capital. We also do, as I mentioned, a lot of different market research on behalf of our client companies, and really try and help them with developing and growing their business. We also provide assistance in helping innovative companies with their work to try and help commercialize their technology as well. So the other thing about this network, we go on to the next screen, is we have a number of specialized services as well. As this shows you, we have a map of our state. We have 27 different Illinois Small Business Development Centers, but also as a part of that network, we have 7 Illinois Procurement Technical Assistance Centers that are specialized and focused on helping companies sell their goods or services to either local, state, or federal government agencies, and a number of services provided there. And also, we have 8 SBDC international trade centers that really focus on providing that one-on-one assistance and training in helping those companies to, especially those new to export companies, look at international markets as a way to expand their current markets and help them, again, grow their companies. So, like I said, our website there on the screen, we have an 800 number and a First Stop Business Information Center, also an environmental assistance program, a lot of different things that are out there to help small companies. And we are very pleased to be part of this presentation and partnering with both LSA and HIBU on this presentation. And with that, I am going to go ahead and turn it back over to Nick to finish up the presentation. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Becky and Greg, and apologies to everybody for our diversion into our crowdsourcing technology solutions webinar. So back to social media now, hopefully we can stay on track here. So Greg did a great job, I think, of giving an overview of the why you need to be doing social media marketing. What I'm going to do is talk a little bit at a high level, kind of 100,000-foot view level of the how to do social media marketing, how to think about it. As Becky and Greg both said, there is a white paper out there as well that gives a lot more detailed information. Due to time, we're gonna keep it pretty high level here, but hopefully this will be useful to you. Just a little bit of background on HIBU. HIBU is a nationwide agency that specializes in doing digital marketing for small businesses. We have a partnership with Facebook around what they call their SMB specialty. So we've been working with Facebook for a number of years now on how to bring the most effective forms of social media marketing to small businesses. So what I'm going to do today is talk about a little bit about the changing landscape, what's different now than 3 years ago or 2 years ago, talk about how to build a multidimensional strategy, talk about content and engagement, approaches to advertising, how you should think about setting up your advertising campaigns to be successful and be effective and to meet your business goals, and then just touch a little bit on some of the changes in consumer behavior that are happening out there in the marketplace and a little bit about how you can adapt your business practices to match that consumer behavior. So if you go back a few years ago, Facebook was really all about content marketing. That's how they came to market, talking to small businesses. And the model was kind of this virtual cycle of, business would write an interesting post, put that post on their Facebook page. That post would attract consumers who would like the business. And over time, you would keep going through that cycle and building up more and more likes. The more likes you had, the more people who saw your your marketing in the form of the posts or the content. And over time, you would build up this hopefully large audience of local consumers who are following your business. But there's a couple problems with that approach that have evolved over time. The first of them is that it's always been very difficult for business owners to equate a like to some intrinsic business value. So how do you measure whether that like actually turns into business? Do you know whether that like is actually attracting new consumers or just bringing back your existing customers? And how do you determine a return on investment on it? That's been a fundamental challenge in that whole model of content marketing. The second one, which is maybe even more important and has really accelerated in the last year or two, is that the news feed, where most of these posts appear to consumers, has become a lot more crowded. So you've probably noticed in your own Facebook news feed that news publishers, other kinds of content publishers, local and national advertisers are all kind of competing for that resource, along with, of course, the friends and family content that made Facebook so successful in the first place. And since Facebook actually does really care about the consumer experience and wants people to see interesting content, they've really tailored over time the mix of content that goes into that news feed. And the net of that is that for the average small business owner, only about 3% of their followers, people who have liked their business, actually see any given post, which makes it, again, very difficult to break through that noise, break through that clutter, and get that organic content in front of the audience you're trying to reach. So what this has led to is the need to really branch out from doing content marketing into what we call a three-dimensional strategy here. So it's about reaching and engaging new consumers. It's about maintaining that active social media presence, that is posting content, and then it's about making sure that you're engaging with those consumers, and especially that you're engaging with them in a timely fashion. And from our point of view, all three of these are equally important aspects of it. So you can't really take any shortcuts on this. If you do, there's a number of things that can go wrong, right? You could have your marketing only reaching your local consumers or local customers. As I mentioned before, only about 3% of posts actually get seen by a consumer who's liking your business, so you're not getting yourself in front of news prospects. Conversely, you could have a great ad campaign out there that is bringing people back into your website, but if you're not also posting and don't have new content in front of them, they'll often bail, not seeing any new content. They'll lose confidence in the business and your interest in the consumer audience and leave. Or you could have a great campaign and you could have great content, but as you start to stimulate people to respond to those and comment on them and post reviews and so forth, if you're not responding to them, again, they'll think you're not interested in them and they'll leave. And we see this over and over again when people are doing kind of single-dimensional campaigns or programs. So you really need to combine all three of these things. So it's really about three things: running a great ad campaign, posting regularly on your page, and then being responsive to customer questions and customer comments on those posts on your page. So just a little bit about content management and engagement. If you look at content and what it takes to keep your page fresh and keep interesting content on it, there are really three different types of content you can think about. And again, they're equally important, but each of them takes a little bit different level of effort, a little bit different initiative on your part. The first of them is reposting. So there's a ton of interesting content out there relevant to almost any kind of business. So one approach you can take is to go out and find that content, find things that have been posted in magazine sites and blogs and so forth that you think will be interesting to your consumer audience, to your customers, and repost that on your page. That's probably the easiest thing to do to get some relevant content on your page and start to generate some engagement with your customers. The other thing you can do is, of course, write unique posts about your own business. This is a little bit harder hurdle to get over. It takes a little more effort. It requires you to be comfortable with writing and putting your writing out there, but it complements the more generic kind of curated content, if you will, from reposting and personalizes your page a bit more. So it's a good thing to mix in. And then third, Greg mentioned earlier the importance of reviews and how consumers out there view reviews as the number one most trustable piece of content. So the other thing you can do is solicit reviews from your customers at point of sale or through Facebook and get that content posted onto your Facebook page, either through posts directly on your page in your newsfeed or through reviews that go on to a reviews tab on your Facebook page. And again, a little more detail about how you can approach that in the white paper that will accompany this. Once you have that content out there, of course, your hope is that it's going to start to stimulate responses from customers. You're going to get dialogue going with your customers and between your customers. And it's really important that you monitor this on a regular basis, that you not have customers who are posting reviews that get no response from you, whether they're good or bad reviews, that you're not getting comments or questions from customers and not answering. Again, the fastest way you can turn off the consumer is by not being responsive to them. So timely response is really important. It is important to remember that while we talk about Facebook a lot here, and Facebook is obviously the big gorilla out there in the market, consumers use a lot of different social media platforms. So it is important that you monitor what's going on Instagram, monitor what's going on Twitter and those others. Each business will likely have a different set of consumers who may have different preferences, and so it's important to make sure you monitor all those. And then it's really critical to not ignore the negatives. I think one thing a lot of businesses do, they'll see a negative review, they'll see a negative comment, and they'll just ignore it and go on and spend their time responding to the positive ones. That's about the worst thing you can do in terms of building up confidence from other consumers that you care about them, you care about their experience with your business. So it's really important to respond to them. Even if you can't solve the problem, at least show that you care about the problem. So moving on from content to advertising, really there's a couple-step process here. You want to thought process you want to take yourself through. The first part of it is figuring out your advertising objective. So Facebook has lots of different types of ads out there. There are really three fundamental ones that are designed to meet the needs of the local small business. One of them is called a local awareness ad, and that is just like it sounds like. It's an ad unit that is designed to keep your business top of mind with a broad audience of people in your local market. That is to get that ad in front of people on Instagram and Facebook, Instagram being an extension of the Facebook ad network, to keep your business top of mind so that when people are thinking about interacting with a plumber, a lawyer, a landscaper, what have you, that they think of you first. The second one is what Facebook calls click ads. So this is about driving traffic to your website. It's a more immediate, more direct response sort of advertising. So if you want to capture users now who are thinking about your type of business and bring them into your website where you can present your business to them in a more complete fashion, you'd want to use a click ad and drive that high-quality traffic into your website to convert it. And then finally, probably the most recent of the 3 different types of ads is what Facebook calls their leads ads. And this is a native unit within Facebook that is designed to capture marketing leads within the Facebook experience and deliver them to the business. So the ad is going to click through to a form fill, which is mostly pre-populated by Facebook based on what they know about that consumer, and it's going to capture that information and pass it over to the business owner so you can extend additional marketing efforts out to that consumer. Usually that's done with some kind of quid pro quo, that is you are offering something to the consumer as part of that ad unit in exchange for the consumer being willing to give up their personal information. So in this case, you see the example here, get 20% off in exchange for signing up for the newsletter. So once you have your ad objective defined, the next thing to do is to start thinking about your creative. There is no really right or wrong answer here, but what you want to think about is what's the best format for your ad? What are the assets that you have to bring to the party? Do you already have video content that you can use? Do you have photographic content that you can use? What do you think is going to drive the best consumer response? What's the best way to describe your business in a short headline? There are strict limits on the amount of text that can be on a Facebook ad, so you need to be able to boil down your key message for your business that's going to attract consumers into that space. And then what's the most appropriate call to action? Each of those different ad units has different types of calls to action. Call to action is the little button you typically see on the bottom right-hand side of the ad that might say get directions or call or learn more or click to website or something like that. Each of those different calls to action can stimulate a different response from the consumer, obviously. Now, in all of this, what's really important is to remember that you as a small business owner or a small business marketer probably don't know what's going to actually drive the best consumer response. That's a hugely unpredictable thing. And so what's really important is to test a lot of different combinations, measure them, and be willing to adjust. The image that you think is the most beautiful isn't necessarily the one that's going to get the most clicks from consumers. So it's really important that you cycle things through and test different things and adjust your advertising campaign appropriately. And then the third element is targeting. So Facebook has, we all see how much information Facebook has about consumers. A lot of this can be used to target ad campaigns. You can target on demographics, on behavior, on interest. What's important to remember, though, is that Facebook also has this massive computer that learns about and optimizes ad campaigns, and so that it's often a mistake, actually, to go really deep and granular on the demographic, behavioral, and interest targeting. What can end up happening is that you reduce the distribution and also the effectiveness of the ad. So the best practice really is to establish those basic criteria, obviously geography, if you only want to attract local consumers, age and gender, if those are appropriate to your business. So if you're running a salon, for example, you may not want to target males, but otherwise to keep the targeting parameters as broad as possible and let Facebook's algorithms do the rest of the heavy lifting for you. There are ways that if you have data, like you have an email marketing list, you can upload that into Facebook and use that to do what they call custom audiences and lookalike audiences. And again, there's more description of this in the white paper, and those can really complement what you're doing with Facebook algorithms and help their system do a better job of delivering your ad to the right consumer. So just to back up a little bit, so start out with settling on a key ad objective based on your business goals. Choose the right ad formats, test and adjust those ad formats, and just remember and try to avoid the temptation to over-target, thinking that you want to reach males from 18 to 24 who drive red Corvettes and live in Schaumburg, Illinois, or what have you, and let Facebook's algorithms do a lot of that targeting for you. Okay, so just touching it a little bit on, I mentioned the consumer behavior is changing in a couple of interesting ways. One of those is the move away from the phone as a traditional, pick up the phone and talk to someone sort of model. So we have now a whole generation of younger consumers who don't want to pick up the phone. They want to text or communicate in some other way digitally with their phone. Sometimes that's because it's silent, and so they can do it at work, or they can do it while they're in a meeting, or they can do it while they're in a coffee shop and not have other people overhear it. Sometimes it's because it's asynchronous. They can send a message off, wait for a response, and decide when to continue that engagement, and they can stop easily when they're done. So it's a little bit less commitment. And the other thing is the rise of Facebook Messenger. So in addition to texting, which has been out there for a while, Messenger is now allowing consumers to engage in a different way with small businesses. You can enable that on your Facebook page. You can enable that on your website. And the only warning there is that once you do commit to it, you need to live up to it. Facebook will tell consumers how responsive you are right on your Facebook page. You've probably seen that on business Facebook pages that you've gone to. Typically responds in under a minute. Typically responds in 3 years. And so once you put those forms of communication out there to attract those millennial consumers, you need to live up to that and be ready and able to respond to it. A couple other things you'll see is that people's usage of social media, because it's across multiple devices, it's not just at the desktop anymore. It's all about the smartphone and the tablet. That's really spread out the peak usage time. So a lot of the usage time is now in the evening. And what that means is that consumers are seeing your ad or engaging with your content at times when you may not be open and ready for business. So to maximize that, to capture all those kind of off-peak times, it's important to start thinking about adding online conversion events. So things like a book now. If your business lives off of appointments and reservations with consumers, adding a book now button can help you catch that. You hear different numbers for this, but approximately 30% of phone calls or engagements that happen outside of normal business hours, and make sure those customers can reach you, book an appointment, and then instead of moving on to the next person in their search results list. Facebook has a bunch of tools out there that make building your business page really easy, and make adding things like Book Now buttons and Messenger buttons and so forth onto their page really easy as well. And again, a bit more detail about this in the white paper. So lots of stuff here. I've only really just kind of touched the surface of it, and it's constantly changing. And consumer behavior is changing too, but the good news in this is that there is an industry of people like LSA, like the small business development centers, like Haibu out there ready to help you. So an important thing to think about here too is, do you want to do this yourself, or do you want somebody to do it for you? There's no right answer here. Lots of people choose to do it themselves. If you do, you just need to think about what you're trying to accomplish. Make sure you do your research. There's a lot of material out there that can help you come up to speed on all the different tools and whatever you decide, just again remember that there's plenty of help out there. You can reach out to a company like Haibu, who's partnered with Facebook, or any of other Facebook's other marketing partners, and you can reach out to entities like LSA and SBDC, as you said before.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much, Nick. I think the next slide, yeah, I just want to remind everybody, we've kind of been referencing it throughout the presentation, but if you are looking for more detail on Facebook marketing, you can go to the link here, www.marketingbitz.com/reports/Haibu. Is that right? I never know, but you can see it. And you can download the report at that link. I'll also be including the report in the email recap tomorrow, along with the recording of this presentation, so you can also find it there. But now is the time for us to move on to Q&A. So I would like to encourage everybody, if you want to get the most out of this presentation, ask us questions. Tell us what you want to know. And I can see some people have already found the questions box, but if you're looking for it, it's on the lower right-hand side of your screen. So ask us questions. Let us know what you want to know. But otherwise, I think, Greg, you were going to ask a question or two to just sort of get it started.
Yeah, thanks very much, Nick. Great overview of this material, which can be complicated for people. And I've been in a lot of situations where local businesses will ask a range of kind of common questions. And one of the questions on the organic side that people often ask is, how frequently should I post on a site like Facebook? Do you guys have a recommended frequency?
Yeah, I mean, there's no, again, no right or wrong answer to that necessarily, but I would put yourself in the mindset of a consumer and think about how often you really need, you really are interested in hearing from somebody and how much you can consume. It is possible to overshoot for sure, so you don't necessarily need to hear from see information from your dentist 14 times a day. I would say on average we recommend something like once or twice a week is more than enough. But again, if your business thrives on doing a lot of events, if you have events every day, you may need to increase that frequency. If it's a more, like I said, like a professional services business, you may want to tail that back a bit.
Another question, which is sort of well, on the ad side, I was going to try and make an analogy, but I'll dispense with that. You talked about 3 ad types being of relevance to this audience, or 3 categories of advertising on Facebook. Is there a best ad unit or ad type for businesses that primarily sell stuff in the physical world, either service businesses or small retailers that are selling goods to people?
I would say, generally speaking, the local awareness ads are designed for that audience. So they're really optimized to get your brand out there in front of lots of consumers who are going to respond to it. But again, it is a choice between thinking about building up your brand and your awareness and top of mindness, if that's a term, of your business over the course of time, versus more of a direct response model like a clicks ad, where you're trying to get people onto your website now, today, to drive a more immediate response. So, I mean, they're 2 different forms of investment. They certainly complement each other a lot, but you really want to think about, if you're a new business and don't have a lot of presence or awareness out there in the market, you may want to start with a local awareness objective and then move on later to a more of a clicks objective to try to convert more quickly.
Is there any kind of tracking or? Oh, you have a question, Becky?
We have several questions actually pending. So unless you want, you can ask the one you had.
No,
Greg,
no. That's fine. I'm sure the audience will cover the areas I was going to cover.
Okay, so one of the questions that we're getting is there a specific social media platform that you might recommend that you think is more effective for B2B marketing?
Yeah, I'm not the expert on that. We don't do a lot of B2B marketing at Haibu, but I would say, broadly speaking, I would certainly look at LinkedIn. You can reach business owners who may be appropriate to you. That's generally contextually a more relevant audience for B2B marketing. But you can certainly use Facebook effectively for that as well. I mean, the behavioral targeting, the interest targeting, again, can help you get to people who are small, who are business owners. It all depends on who you're selling to, but.
Greg, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I would add that content marketing is a big part of B2B marketing, especially if there's a complex sale involved. So LinkedIn is probably a good go-to place. But there are other ways to, blogs, YouTube. There are other ways to get B2B content out in front of people. So that's all I'll say for this sort of short time here. But if you want to send an email to If you want to send me an email, Greg at thelsa.org, I can give you a more complete answer.
Okay. And so we had another question about LinkedIn. It says, do these tips apply to LinkedIn as well? I mean, I would say, I'm not the expert here, but I mean, the content marketing stuff surely does. But do you know anything, Nick, about LinkedIn's paid advertising and how that might differ for their advertising options, how that might differ from Facebook?
Yeah, we don't. I'm not a LinkedIn expert. We don't use LinkedIn as part of the solutions we offer to small businesses. Again, mainly because it tends to skew towards B2B a bit more than B2C.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly they have also a lot of powerful targeting aspects. They know a different sort of thing about their user than Facebook does. They obviously know a lot about people's employment, where they work, where they have worked in the past, who they're connected to, and so forth. So it's a different, but also a very deep set of knowledge about the people who are using LinkedIn, and of course their targeting for ads is very much geared towards what they know about those consumers or about those users.
Okay. Okay, so we have someone else here who's saying they sound a little bit frustrated with Facebook advertising, saying they've spent a lot of money on it and they're not seeing an ROI and they're afraid to do more. So what would your maybe suggestions be for sort of taking another look at your Facebook advertising strategy? Like if you have done a lot of ads on Facebook and you've been like this person and you haven't seen a lot of ROI, what do you think maybe you should look at first to start revising your strategy?
Yeah, I would go back really to the things we talked about. So I would start with saying that most of the people who are doing, and I don't know if that's the case in this situation, but most of the people who are doing advertising or have done advertising on Facebook are doing what's called a promoted post. I mean, that's the #1 way that people spend ad dollars on Facebook historically. That's starting to shift as Facebook starts to push more capabilities into their advertising platform. Promoted posts are great for driving engagement on a page. They're great if your strategy is about building up likes on your page, but we talked about all the pitfalls of that as a strategy. So first thing I would say is if the advertising you've tried is boosting posts through Facebook, I would suggest going in and trying a true ad campaign in the way that we talked about here. Beyond that, I would go back to the things we just talked about, and the more detail that's in the white paper around that. Again, think about what you're trying to accomplish. Make sure you're picking the ad type that is designed to accomplish that goal, so you're not working at cross purposes with yourself and not wasting your money, and that you're really tuning your ad creative. And then, of course, there are things that happen downstream from the ad. If you're running a clicks ad campaign, you're driving people back to your website, it may be that your website's not converting very well. So you really need to look at that full stack of, the ad itself, and is the ad performing well, all the way down to, how are you engaging with the consumer, either through a phone call or through, through your website or what have you, after they clicked on the ad and responded to it. It's really hard to give a specific answer to that because I don't know where things were falling apart on the campaign you were running.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Let me inject something. Let me inject something there, because the question I was going to ask before we went to the audience questions was about tracking those local awareness ads. Is there a recommended method to track those, Nick? Just real quickly, if that's the ad that you're saying that everybody should start with, the ad type.
Yeah, I mean, the core metrics you're going to get around that are going to be, impressions and reach. So how many consumers did you in fact reach? You're going to want to look at the click-through rate on that ad to see that people are actually responding to it. And then you can drop, again, depending on how sophisticated you are and whether you manage your own website or not, you can put Facebook pixels on your website, and you can start to track. You can start to redirect the targeting of that ad to people who have visited your website in the past, who have expressed interest in your business in the past, and that can improve the performance over time as well. You do need a certain size audience in order for that to be effective. That's what's called custom audiences or lookalike audiences within Facebook for targeting. And then you can also, put Facebook conversion pixels onto your website. So if you have events that are happening on your website, let's say you have a online booking widget on your website, and you want to try, your ad campaign is all about trying to drive conversions around that. You can put what Facebook calls a conversion pixel into that element of your website, and you can start to measure those conversions that you're actually getting. And so you can then really start to get a true picture of ROI.
Mm-hmm.
One final thing, and then back to audience questions. You should be aware, though, that Facebook is doing a lot of things to be able to track ads into physical stores. So we will see ultimately Facebook make it possible for local businesses to track the connection between an ad exposure online and somebody's visit to a store, and maybe even ultimately a purchase. But that exists today in limited form, and it's going to be more widely available in the future. So just be aware that that's coming.
Yeah, just my comment on that would be that works best today on very large-scale programs where you've got a lot of data, because a lot of it tends to be statistical models. And I think the work that's happening now is trying to figure out how to take that down to the small business owner who's running a relatively small campaign, not the Best Buys of the world, in order to make it effective there. So yeah, I agree. That is an emerging capability that we should watch for over the next couple of years.
So I have someone who's asking a question directly about working with Haibu and kind of how all of that works, working with you on creating Facebook ads. So I think I'm just going to send you their contact information directly, and you can follow up personally with a response for that. But another question that we're getting is about if you have multiple offices for the same business. They said something about adding a second office address. So I think what they're getting at is if you have a Facebook page, you think it's best practice to have one Facebook page for the whole company? Should you have a different page for every office, especially maybe if you're in different states? Like is there like a best practice around that?
Yeah, there are varying opinions about that out there. A lot of it depends on whether those multiple offices are really doing substantially the same thing, trying to reach substantially the same audience. So you may have, for example, one case might be two Chinese restaurants in the same city, right? One in one neighborhood, one in another neighborhood, who are again trying to reach substantially the same people. Facebook allows you to add multiple addresses onto your Facebook page. There's a locations tab you can put on your page, and you can put multiple locations there. And then if you're running an ad campaign, you're probably targeting largely the same audience with that ad campaign, maybe with two different geos around the targeting. Conversely, you might have two different businesses, two businesses owned by the same owner but doing very different things. A emergency plumbing business and a bathroom renovation business that may even operate under two different website domains. And in that case, you would probably want two different Facebook pages. You're reaching two different types of users. So again, there's no absolute right or wrong answer to that. But generally, if the businesses are very similar in nature, then it makes sense to put them onto a single Facebook page. If they're very different in nature, then it just like if you're doing it on a website, it might make sense to have separate pages for them.
Okay. Again, I just want to remind everybody we have about 10 minutes left of the webinar, so if you do have any burning questions, you can always feel free to drop them into the question box, and they don't have to be about Facebook specifically. You can ask questions about other social media as well, although the bulk of what we're focusing on is Facebook today. So I have one other question about boosting posts on Facebook. What's sort of the difference between boosting a post and then actually going in and creating an ad?
Yeah, the difference is less about the format and the look and feel of the ad, because really they look substantially the same. The difference is in how Facebook actually runs that campaign, or does the delivery of that ad to consumers under the hood. And for boosting a post, they're going to optimize that ad, and that means they're going to figure out who to deliver it to over time based on looking at the data. They're going to optimize it for likes, essentially, so that the purpose of that ad unit and its delivery is going to be to reach people who are most likely to click the like button and like your business. As we talked about before, that may or may not have substantial business value for you, depending on the rest of your marketing suite. The ad campaign, on the other hand, is either going to be optimized for people who are going to click to your website. If you've got conversion pixels in your website, it can be optimized to deliver your ad to people who are most likely to convert on your website. Or if you're running a local awareness campaign, it will be delivered to the people who are in your market most likely to respond to that ad and who meet your targeting criteria. So the difference is really under the hood in that machine that Facebook manages to optimize the delivery of that ad, to decide which consumers to put your ad in front of more than anything else.
Okay. So another question I just thought of too is, what about if you're a business and you don't really have that much of a marketing budget? Like, you don't really want to spend more than, I don't even know, $100 a month or something like that on advertising, or maybe even less than that, because we do have a lot of small businesses in our network who don't have a bunch of money to spend on Facebook advertising. Is there any sort of, like, what would you recommend for a business like that who doesn't have a very large marketing budget for Facebook? Where should they start, maybe, or where would their money be, like, better put?
Sure. I mean, you can if you're willing to do it yourself, and you have the time and energy to put into it, but not the cash to put into it, you can start on Facebook for $1 a day. So $30 plus or minus a month, and you can run a very effective ad campaign on Facebook with that $1 a day. When when you start to get into things like wanting to test different variations on your ad, do what's called A/B testing on your ad, you may have to increase that spend to be effective, or at least to do it in a relatively short timeline. But you can get away with that, and there are certainly lots of advertisers out there who are doing it themselves, spending relatively small dollars and just playing around with Facebook and tweaking it and tuning it over time. Obviously, as you get into the to the agency world and you start to want to have someone do it for you, it's difficult to to stay at those kind of price points, and you're probably going to have to move up to a couple $100s a month in order to have an agency like Haibu or somebody like us do that work for you. But you can certainly absolutely get started at a much smaller level than that, and start to get some experience, start to learn what works and what doesn't work, and then add to your budget yourself over time if you see fit, if you're getting the results that you expect to get.
Yeah, I'd echo that. It's pretty much a time versus money equation. I mean, you may never develop the expertise of a professional social media marketer, but you can do a lot if you're really committed and you enjoy it and you're willing to invest the time. A lot of people don't have that time, and they try a couple of things. They may or may not work. Most of the time they don't, and then they blame the medium and say, well, this isn't working. And really the situation is that they haven't developed this sufficient expertise to be able to do it, do the marketing effectively. So you do have to be prepared, as Nick says, to invest a bunch of time, try things, learn, try again, and a key element of that is enjoyment. You have to enjoy it, or you're not going to get good at it. But if time is at a premium, then you need to be prepared to probably bring in somebody in-house or pay an outside agency to do the work for you.
Okay, well, that's all the questions that I have received. So does anyone have any final thoughts or, maybe questions of your own?
Nick, do you have anything you want to say as a kind of a wrap-up to people? Give people some sense of, end on a high note and upbeat, you can do it, hope versus fear kind of thing here?
I would just say, don't be afraid to try things. Get in there and try it yourself. If it doesn't work out, you can certainly back off and hire an agency to do it for you. But you're not going to do any harm by getting in there and trying. And as we said just a few minutes ago, it's not expensive to get in there and try it out.
And I would say that you're going to be a smarter consumer of third-party services, of agency services, if you have some experience, because you'll know the terminology, you'll know what the tools look like, and it'll make you a better decision maker around who to work with. My final comment would be, even though that sounded like a final comment, it really wasn't. My final comment would be, all of this stuff, people get very lost in the labyrinth of tactics, and really the most sound advice that I've seen and could give is just do the best job you can with your business. If you deliver a great service and you're ethical and really committed and doing a great job, serving your customers, that's the foundation. And then all this other stuff doesn't take care of itself exactly, but your satisfied customers will help you out on social media. They will leave positive reviews if you encourage them, hey, if you liked what I did, leave me a good review, or leave me a review on Google or Yelp or Facebook, even though Yelp doesn't want you to solicit reviews. But that's the foundation, and then all of this stuff builds from that, and you'll find that people will reflect that on social media on their own, independent of your efforts. And then as you sort of do this incrementally, you'll get more sophisticated about it, and it will be less daunting over time.
Yep, I think that's great advice.
So I think we have one more slide. If we could just advance to the final slide. Yep. So I just wanted to say thank you, everybody, so much for joining us today. We hope that you, learned something, that you can take something away and start applying it. And if you did have any questions that we maybe didn't get to, or you think of something later, feel free to email us at info@marketingbitz.com. We'll forward your question along to the right person, either Nick or Mark or Greg. And otherwise, you will be receiving an email tomorrow, like I said, with a recap of the webinar in the form of a video, as well as a link to the report that we've been talking about throughout the webinar. So again, thank you so much for listening and joining us, and have a great rest of your Monday.